If you're over 60 and noticing muscle loss, fatigue, or weaker balance, it's not just aging, it could be sarcopenia, a silent muscle wasting condition. But what if I told you that 3 specific cheeses, yes, cheese, can actually help rebuild lean muscle, support your joints, and reverse the effects of aging on your body? Forget tasteless supplements and risky shakes. Nature has already packaged these muscle-saving nutrients into something enjoyable, delicious, and surprisingly effective. In this video, I'll show you which cheeses to eat, when to eat them, and why they work at the cellular level so you can stay stronger, longer. Let's dive in. As the body ages, a series of physiological changes occur that affect everything from metabolism and hormone balance to cellular repair and nutrient absorption, and one of the most significant challenges that emerges after the age of 60 is a condition known as anabolic resistance. This is a state where the muscles become less responsive to the usual signals that stimulate muscle protein synthesis, even when the individual consumes adequate amounts of dietary protein. Unlike in younger adults, where a moderate protein intake can trigger the rebuilding of muscle tissue after exercise or daily wear and tear, older adults require not just more protein, but also higher quality sources rich in essential amino acids to achieve the same anabolic response. This resistance to building muscle can be linked to declines in circulating levels of anabolic hormones like testosterone, growth hormone, and insulin-like growth factor 1, IGF-1, as well as changes in muscle receptor sensitivity, inflammation, oxidative stress, and mitochondrial dysfunction, all of which increase with age. In practical terms, this means that even if an older adult continues to eat the same amount of food and maintain a stable body weight, they may still be losing lean muscle mass at a slow but steady rate, often unnoticed until weakness, frailty, or sudden injuries occur. The reduced ability of aging muscle to effectively utilize amino acids, especially the key muscle-building amino acid leucine, leads to an imbalance where muscle protein breakdown exceeds muscle protein synthesis, gradually contributing to the progression of sarcopenia, a degenerative loss of muscle and strength that impairs mobility, balance, and metabolic health. This inefficiency in muscle repair and rebuilding is further compounded by other age factors such as reduced physical activity, chronic low-grade inflammation, sometimes called inflammaging, poor sleep quality, inadequate sun exposure leading to vitamin D deficiency, and impaired digestion or absorption of key nutrients, all of which diminish the body's capacity to support lean muscle tissue. What makes anabolic resistance particularly problematic is its stealthy onset. It doesn't manifest suddenly, but rather builds slowly over years, silently undermining one's physical resilience and metabolic flexibility. As a result, older adults may find themselves more prone to fatigue, more susceptible to blood sugar instability and insulin resistance, and more vulnerable to falls and fractures due to compromised muscular support and skeletal density. Furthermore, skeletal muscle isn't just about mobility or strength. It plays a vital role in glucose disposal, fat burning, immune regulation, and the production of myokines, which are signaling molecules that influence brain function, inflammation, and overall longevity. Therefore, the loss of muscle through anabolic resistance has far-reaching consequences that extend beyond appearance or fitness, influencing how the body regulates energy, repairs itself, and responds to environmental stressors. Addressing anabolic resistance is not as simple as just eating more protein. The timing, type, and distribution of protein throughout the day become crucial, as does the incorporation of resistance training or muscle-stimulating movement to help resensitize the muscle tissue to anabolic signals. Specific nutrients like leucine, omega-3 fatty acids, vitamin D3, magnesium, and creatine may also play a role in overcoming this resistance, along with lifestyle adjustments that prioritize recovery, stress reduction, and blood sugar balance. While the muscle-building pathways of a 60-plus-year-old may not respond as readily as they did in youth, they are not completely shut off. They are simply harder to activate and require a more deliberate, strategic approach that takes into account the unique metabolic terrain of the aging body and the biological resistance that naturally arises with time. Sarcopenia, often misunderstood as a simple consequence of aging or reduced physical activity, is far more complex and insidious than mere loss of strength or muscle volume. It represents a deep systemic shift in the body's physiology that touches nearly every aspect of health and functionality, particularly as we cross into our 60s and beyond. While it does manifest outwardly as frailty, weakness, and difficulty performing basic physical tasks, the deeper implications are far more severe and often overlooked until serious complications arise. The gradual loss of skeletal muscle doesn't just make a person feel weaker. It alters the body's ability to regulate blood sugar, manage weight, generate heat, maintain posture, and protect bones and joints during movement. Muscle is metabolically active tissue. It burns calories even at rest, acts as a reservoir for glucose and amino acids, and plays a key role in hormonal signaling. As muscle mass declines, so does the body's capacity to dispose of glucose properly, which can directly lead to insulin resistance, a precursor to type 2 diabetes. With less muscle available to take in glucose after a meal, blood sugar levels remain elevated longer, straining the pancreas and promoting fat storage, especially visceral fat around the organs, which is highly inflammatory and metabolically dangerous. This process sets off a cascade of dysfunction. Elevated insulin levels promote further fat gain, especially around the belly, while also suppressing growth hormone and contributing to chronic fatigue, brain fog, and a slower metabolism. At the same time, the loss of muscle weakens the physical structure of the body, impairing balance, coordination, and reflexes. This is why sarcopenia is so closely tied to falls, which are among the leading causes of injury, loss of independence, and even death in older adults. A simple stumble that a younger person can correct with a strong core or stable legs can result in fractures, hospitalizations, and a downward spiral in someone suffering from sarcopenia. The fear of falling often leads older individuals to reduce their activity further, which in turn accelerates muscle wasting and a vicious cycle of decline. Moreover, skeletal muscle plays a critical role in the endocrine system. It produces myokines, which are signaling molecules that communicate with the brain, liver, and immune system, regulating inflammation and even influencing longevity. As muscle shrinks, so does the production of these beneficial compounds, potentially contributing to cognitive decline, increased inflammation, and impaired immune function. Sarcopenia doesn't occur in isolation. It intertwines with metabolic syndrome, obesity, osteoporosis, and cardiovascular disease, forming a complex web of degenerative conditions that reinforce each other. The problem is further complicated by the fact that sarcopenia can be present even in individuals who are overweight or obese, leading to what's called sarcopenic obesity, where a person carries excessive fat but dangerously low lean muscle mass. This condition is particularly risky because it hides beneath the surface. Someone may appear to have enough body mass, but they lack the muscular foundation that supports metabolism, movement, and organ function. Nutritional deficiencies, chronic inflammation, low-grade acidosis, hormonal imbalances, and even certain medications can exacerbate this loss of muscle tissue. It's not just about eating protein or exercising more. It requires a precise understanding of nutrient timing, anabolic triggers like leucine and resistance training, and supporting the digestive system to properly absorb and utilize nutrients. Sarcopenia, when left unaddressed, becomes a silent thief of vitality. It erodes not only physical strength, but also metabolic efficiency, independence, and long-term resilience against disease. Cheese, often misrepresented or unfairly categorized as unhealthy, is in fact one of the most concentrated sources of bioavailable nutrition on the planet, especially certain types that have undergone traditional aging processes or are sourced from grass-fed animals. When we talk about muscle restoration, particularly in individuals over the age of 60, what we're really referring to is the body's ability to counter anabolic resistance, a condition where the muscles no longer respond to normal levels of dietary protein the way they once did. The solution is not simply more protein, but better protein, the kind that delivers the right amino acid profile in the most efficient and absorbable form. And this is where specific cheeses come in. These cheeses are naturally rich in complete proteins, meaning they provide all 9 essential amino acids in the right proportions, which are critical for muscle repair, hormone production, and cellular regeneration. More importantly, many of these cheeses are also particularly high in leucine, the key amino acid that acts as the ignition switch for muscle protein synthesis. Without enough leucine, especially in the context of aging muscles, the body simply cannot rebuild muscle tissue, regardless of how much total protein is consumed. Leucine is the trigger. It tells the body it's time to rebuild, repair, and grow. When combined with the naturally occurring fats in cheese, this amino acid becomes even more effective as dietary fat slows digestion and enhances nutrient absorption, allowing the amino acids to be released more steadily into the bloodstream. The fat-soluble vitamins found in these cheeses, such as vitamin A, D, E, and K2, also play critical roles in maintaining metabolic function, supporting calcium utilization, and protecting against inflammation, all of which are essential to reversing sarcopenia and supporting long-term muscle function. Beyond the proteins and fats, cheese from grass-fed cows contains conjugated linoleic acid, SCLA, which has been linked to improved fat metabolism and reduced muscle wasting. It also contains small amounts of natural creatine and glutathione precursors, further enhancing its value as a recovery food. The aging process of certain cheeses enhances the bioavailability of these nutrients, meaning your body has to do less work to absorb and use what it needs. In contrast to heavily processed protein powders or synthetic supplements that are often difficult to digest, real, traditionally aged cheese offers a complete living matrix of nutrients that work synergistically with your digestive system. Not all cheeses are equal, however. Some industrially produced varieties are stripped of their natural fats or processed with additives that negate their benefits. But artisanal cheeses, like aged Parmesan, Gruyere, and goat cheese, retain their full spectrum of amino acids, beneficial fats, and microbial cultures. These cheeses not only provide the nutrients necessary for rebuilding muscle, but also contribute to gut health, which is increasingly understood to be intimately connected to muscle maintenance through the gut-muscle axis. The probiotics and enzymes found in fermented cheeses help maintain a healthy microbiome, which in turn supports the absorption of protein and the synthesis of neurotransmitters that regulate movement, balance, and coordination. Moreover, these cheeses often contain higher levels of calcium and phosphorus, crucial for maintaining the integrity of the skeletal structure that muscles attach to. Without strong bones, muscle function suffers, and the risk of falls and fractures increases. Especially dangerous in the elderly. Including the right types of cheese in the diet becomes not just about adding flavor or satiety, it becomes a targeted, functional strategy for restoring muscle tissue, maintaining independence, and resisting the cascade of metabolic decline that so often accompanies aging when key nutrients are missing or poorly absorbed. Fermented cheeses offer far more than taste and texture. They hold within them an often overlooked solution to one of aging's most debilitating conditions, sarcopenia, or age muscle loss. While most approaches to reversing muscle wasting focus exclusively on exercise and protein intake, few people understand the critical role of gut health and nutrient absorption in this process. As we age, our digestive efficiency declines, stomach acid production decreases, and our microbiome, the vast ecosystem of bacteria and microbes that live in our gut, undergoes significant shifts. This compromised digestive environment limits our ability to break down and absorb amino acids, trace minerals, and fat-soluble vitamins, even if we're eating a nutrient-dense diet. That means you could be consuming all the right foods, but still suffering from chronic nutrient deficiencies that sabotage your efforts to regain strength. Fermented cheeses play a profound role here because they carry naturally occurring probiotics, enzymes, and fermentation byproducts that not only nourish the gut lining, but also help repopulate the microbiome with beneficial bacteria. These bacteria produce short-chain fatty acids like butyrate, which reduce inflammation, seal up leaky gut, and improve the surface area of the intestines for more efficient absorption. This is foundational for rebuilding muscle because the amino acids that stimulate muscle protein synthesis, especially leucine, isoleucine, valine, must first be properly digested and absorbed to have any effect at the cellular level. What makes fermented cheeses particularly unique is their dual function. They are both nutrient carriers and digestive enhancers. Through the fermentation process, proteins in the cheese are partially broken down into peptides, which are easier for the body to absorb. This pre-digested state bypasses the common limitations seen in older adults with low stomach acid or impaired enzyme function. The lactobacillus strains found in many fermented cheeses also produce enzymes like proteases and lipases, which assist in the breakdown of proteins and fats, allowing for better assimilation of nutrients that are critical to muscle repair and mitochondrial function. When the mitochondria are well fed with amino acids, B vitamins, and cofactors, they produce more energy, which in turn supports muscle contraction, stamina, and recovery. This mitochondrial rejuvenation becomes increasingly important after age 60 when fatigue and muscle atrophy begin to accelerate if cellular energy production is compromised. Another overlooked benefit of fermented cheese is its role in enhancing mineral absorption, particularly of magnesium, calcium, zinc, and phosphorus, all of which are pivotal in nerve signaling, muscle contraction, and enzyme activation. The fermentation process actually unlocks these minerals from the food matrix, making them more bioavailable. Additionally, the fat content in cheese supports the absorption of fat-soluble vitamins such as A, D, E, and K2. Vitamin K2 especially directs calcium into bones and muscles instead of arteries, reducing arterial stiffness and improving circulation to muscle tissue, an essential part of keeping muscle cells nourished and oxygenated. The healthy bacteria in fermented cheese also help synthesize certain B vitamins within the gut, especially B12 and folate, which are required for red blood cell production, DNA repair, and neurological signaling. All indirect yet powerful contributors to muscle strength, balance, and coordination. The interconnectedness between gut health and muscle health is now backed by emerging research on the gut-muscle axis, a complex feedback loop between gut microbiota, nutrient absorption, inflammation levels, and skeletal muscle maintenance. When this axis is disrupted through poor diet, antibiotics, chronic stress, or aging, the body becomes less efficient at building and maintaining muscle. But by incorporating fermented cheeses into the daily diet, particularly those made from raw or grass-fed milk, you begin to repair and reset this axis. The ripple effect is profound. Better digestion, improved nutrient availability, reduced inflammation, and increased anabolic signaling, all necessary conditions for reversing sarcopenia in a natural, sustainable, and deeply nourishing way. When it comes to aging well, especially after 60, few factors are as critical and overlooked as insulin regulation and chronic inflammation. These two physiological forces determine whether you age with strength and energy or decline into muscle loss, fatigue, and degenerative disease. That's where low-lactose, high-fat cheeses come in, offering an underrated but highly effective nutritional tool for stabilizing blood sugar and controlling systemic inflammation. Most people don't realize that insulin isn't just about blood sugar. It's also a major player in fat storage, inflammation, and muscle metabolism. As you age, you become more insulin resistant, meaning your cells don't respond to insulin signals as efficiently. This drives the pancreas to produce even more insulin, creating a vicious cycle of high circulating insulin levels, chronic inflammation, and cellular burnout. But certain cheeses, especially aged varieties like Parmesan, Gouda, Cheddar, and Gruyere, are naturally low in lactose and high in healthy saturated fats, which do not spike insulin the way carbohydrates do. In fact, they may actually blunt the insulin response when paired with other foods, helping to keep your metabolic engine running smoothly throughout the day. The low lactose nature of these cheeses is important because lactose is a sugar, and even small amounts can be problematic for individuals with insulin resistance or impaired glucose tolerance, which are incredibly common after age 60. By choosing aged cheeses where the fermentation process has largely removed the lactose, you reduce the glycemic load of your meals without sacrificing taste or nutrition. Moreover, these cheeses are not only blood sugar friendly, they're packed with short-chain fatty acids, Fs, particularly butyrate, which has been shown to reduce intestinal inflammation, support gut lining integrity, and lower markers of systemic inflammation such as C-reactive protein, CRP. This matters deeply because low-grade inflammation is at the root of nearly every chronic age condition, from heart disease and diabetes to sarcopenia and cognitive decline. The anti-inflammatory properties of these cheeses are further amplified by their rich content of omega-3 fatty acids, conjugated linoleic acid, KLA, and vitamin K2, especially when sourced from grass-fed animals. CLA in particular has been linked to improved body composition, reduced belly fat, and enhanced immune function, all essential for healthy aging. Another overlooked aspect of these cheeses is their ability to trigger satiety hormones such as peptide YY and leptin, which regulate hunger, energy balance, and insulin sensitivity. When you eat high-fat, low-lactose cheeses, you're not just feeding your body macronutrients. You're sending hormonal signals to your brain and pancreas that say, I'm nourished. I don't need to store fat. I'm not inflamed. This is radically different from the hormonal chaos triggered by high-carb or low-fat foods, which often spike insulin, create cravings, and promote fat storage rather than fat burning. Aged cheeses also contain a rich spectrum of bioavailable nutrients like zinc, selenium, phosphorus, and vitamin A, all of which are involved in insulin signaling, mitochondrial energy production, and the modulation of inflammatory cytokines. These nutrients are often deficient in seniors, particularly those following restrictive or low-fat diets that deprive the body of the raw materials it needs to heal and regenerate tissue. What's remarkable is that the fat in these cheeses does not contribute to weight gain in the way many fear. Instead, it supports stable energy levels, helps regulate hormones, and feeds the brain and nervous system. The brain is over 60% fat by dry weight, and it thrives on steady-state fuel, not sugar spikes. And with every bite of full-fat aged cheese, you're not only protecting your insulin response and lowering inflammation, you're giving your body the precise type of fuel it prefers in a low-carb, metabolically aging environment. This type of nutrition aligns beautifully with the needs of the aging body. Less sugar, more fat, fewer spikes, more stability, and a slower, more graceful metabolic burn that preserves energy, strength, and cognitive clarity well into your later years. When it comes to reversing age muscle loss and enhancing metabolic function after 60, it's not just what you eat, it's when you eat it that creates the greatest hormonal shift. Most people over 60 unknowingly begin their day in a catabolic state, a condition where the body breaks down muscle tissue for energy because it lacks sufficient nutrients to stimulate muscle repair and protein synthesis. And this is especially problematic in older adults due to the phenomenon known as anabolic resistance, where the muscle cells become less responsive to amino acids unless the nutritional signal is both strong and strategically timed. The first meal of the day plays a critical role in either continuing the muscle breakdown process or reversing it entirely. Consuming specific aged, low-lactose, high-fat cheeses such as Parmesan, aged cheddar, or Gruyere during your first meal can flip this metabolic switch from catabolic to anabolic by supplying high-quality proteins rich in leucine, the amino acid most responsible for stimulating mTOR, the cellular mechanism that triggers muscle protein synthesis. Timing these cheeses at your first meal after fasting, whether that's traditional breakfast or a later brunch, ensures that your body receives the immediate amino acid signal it needs to halt muscle breakdown and begin rebuilding. After a night of fasting, your insulin levels are low, your cortisol levels are naturally higher, and your body is more primed to use protein efficiently if it's delivered at the right moment. This is when aged cheeses shine. Their complete protein profile, rich in leucine, isoleucine, and valine, the three-branch chain amino acids, delivers a powerful anabolic message to aging muscle fibers. But what makes this more effective is the combination of timing and fat content. The fat in these cheeses slows digestion just enough to allow for a sustained release of amino acids into the bloodstream, providing your muscles with a steady fuel source instead of a short spike that would otherwise get wasted through oxidation. This gradual delivery is ideal for seniors whose muscle cells require longer exposure to amino acids to respond properly. Eating these cheeses in the morning also supports blood sugar stability, which is vital in older adults who are often dealing with some degree of insulin resistance or glucose intolerance. High-carb breakfasts such as cereals, breads, fruits, or even smoothies create a sharp insulin spike that shifts the body into a fat, distinguishable mode and prolongs the catabolic state. In contrast, consuming aged cheeses first thing triggers minimal insulin response, keeping blood glucose steady and preventing the hormonal cascade that promotes fat gain and muscle breakdown. This sets the stage for a day of steady energy, improved focus, and reduced cravings because insulin and cortisol are not being constantly spiked and suppressed. Additionally, the nutrient density of aged cheeses supports other metabolic processes required to exit catabolism. They're rich in vitamin B12, zinc, vitamin A, and bioavailable calcium, which are essential for hormone production, mitochondrial function, and enzyme activation. All of this contributes to the body's ability to recover, repair tissue, and create new muscle fibers, especially in an older, more fragile metabolic environment. The timing of these nutrients matters because when consumed in the morning, they can synergize with your body's natural circadian hormonal rhythm, reinforcing healthy cortisol clearance and supporting optimal adrenal function. If you delay protein consumption or rely solely on coffee or carbohydrates in the morning, your body continues to break down muscle and shift into energy conservation mode. Over time, this pattern accelerates sarcopenia, fatigue, and cognitive decline. But consuming nutrient-dense, aged cheeses early helps establish a muscle-preserving hormonal environment for the rest of the day, supporting longevity and strength at the cellular level through deliberate nutrient signaling, timed precisely when your body needs it most.